What is going on, everyone? My name's Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 37 preview, which obviously makes this the penultimate preview before the end of the season. Only going to be one more after this for Game Week 38, and then we are done. As we get towards the end of the season, I quite often look forward to the break, but then when we get to the kind of last couple of game weeks, I start to think, actually, I kind of want it to go on for a bit more. But it's always good to get refreshed and start again. Obviously, there's a lot still to talk about. We've only 2 weeks left. A lot of people chasing mini leagues, trying to block in mini leagues, win their mini leagues, etc. Looking for differentials to do that. Are Man United players' options? Will Spurs players be rotated out? What to do with Jamie Vardy? Going to talk about all that in the Game Week 37 preview. Quick look back at Game Week 36. So, for me, I think it was actually quite a poor week. I got 80. I've said this a few times now. I think Liverpool have basically masked what is actually quite a poor week. Obviously, I had Mane captain, bought in Trent Alexander-Arnold for Koscielny and have Robertson as well. So I tripled out. They got 50 points. So that means my other 8 players only got 30 points between them, which isn't fantastic. And ultimately meant that I dropped rank. I was in the top 10k. I've dropped about 3,000 places to 12,500. Now it's still really tight at the top. I think I'm only about 10 or 11 points off the top 10k. So literally benching Jota has been my mistake here. Played Deulofeu in the end. He had the home match. I don't know if it was a massive mistake, but the form that Jota has been in recently, I don't think I'll be doing that anytime again soon. So yeah, benching Jota was a mistake. Jimenez back to scoring ways. A few people are starting to get a bit worried about him. I think he blanked for 3 games, which for him at the start of the season you think would be normal, but the way the season's gone, it's not been normal. So happy about that. And having Aguero, obviously millimetres, that goal went in. It keeps the title race fully alive. Obviously, Man City would have still been in the title race even if they'd drawn, but Liverpool would have gone into the driving seat. So I think this is quite interesting. Hopefully, both teams win this week, so we can get that title race going to the final day of the season. But yeah, triple Liverpool, they absolutely smashed it as expected. I think if you had your triple captainship and didn't use it against Huddersfield for Liverpool players, I do think that's probably overthinking a little bit. But obviously, you've still got Man City players to play it on, potentially this week against Leicester. So it's not necessarily all to worry. Blank for Spurs, they were poor. Yeah, like I say, Aguero by millimetres. So I won't dwell on Game Week 36 too much. 80 points, usually a good week, but for me it felt like a bad one. A lot of people used triple captains. People had Salah, etc. They played Jota. So there's lots of 100 scores this week. So even 80 doesn't feel great. And dropping rank at this time of the season is obviously frustrating. But as I always say, hopefully we can claw it back in Game Week 37. So let's talk about it. So for anyone that watched the Scoutcast this week, a lot of these talking points are similar to what we discussed there. So some of the things you might have already heard. Obviously, I apologise for that, but I don't want to just make up other things to talk about when these things are important. Obviously, stepped in there to help out this week. And one of the things I like on this channel, or I try and do, is be consistent. So I have to get a preview out for sure. I'm going to, just for anyone that maybe missed that, go through some points again. I've got quite a few stats and stuff to go through. So the first one is keep or sell Vardy. Now I don't have him. Very frustrating as a non-owner, especially against Arsenal. Obviously to get to 85 minutes, 86 minutes, and then to come away with 2 goals was really frustrating. But it's what he does. He doesn't need those massive chances every game. As long as he gets 1 here or there, or obviously 2, like against Arsenal, he will put them away. So it's a really interesting dynamic because they've got Man City away and then Chelsea at home. Now, Man City are in incredible defensive form. They've only conceded 2 goals in their last 11 games, which is insane. But obviously, Vardy is in form, so it's kind of a forms versus fixture thing. To give you an example of how good he's been, in the last 4 matches, if you take away penalties, his expected goals is 3.27. That's the highest of all attackers in the whole game over the last 4. 15 shots inside the box is only second to Mitrovic. So he is getting those chances more than anyone else. Even if he doesn't need them, he's still getting plenty of chances, plenty of shots away. Man City's going to be a tough game. I'm really not expecting much from there. Can he cause their defence a problem? Yes, he can get in behind with his pace. But how much of the ball are Leicester going to have? The one thing I do like about Leicester, if I own Vardy, is if players like Tielemans or Maddison get the ball in the opponent's half, the first thing, especially Maddison does, is look up, where's Vardy, play a ball in. So I do think Vardy's got the pace to cause problems. Obviously, the fullbacks for City, especially Walker, has got the pace to kind of catch him up. So you might not have as much luck there. But if you can get up against one of the centre-backs, they're not the quickest. But Man City are going to have so much the ball. I think that's a tough one. The Chelsea game at home, much better. Leicester were really good against Arsenal, and I don't think Chelsea have been in that great form this season, or at least recently. So I think there's points there. The key for me is, if you were going to swap him, who would you even swap him for? I think Firmino's not playing again tonight for Liverpool. Lacazette's got Brighton and then Burnley, but he's not been great. Like I'd even think about maybe selling him this week. I probably won't because it's Brighton, but that's how bad he's been for me. Mitrovic, Wilson's fixtures aren't great. Mitrovic is posting pretty good underlying stats, but again, it's Fulham. I'm just not sure I want to trust him. So there's not too much to look at. Obviously, we're going to talk about Man United players in a minute. A lot of that will depend on the press conference because Rashford and Lukaku are both rumoured to be injured. I've seen a report today that says Rashford's trained, Lukaku hasn't, which could mean that, maybe Rashford's an option instead of Vardy. I think a lot of it comes down to the position you're in mid-leagues or overall rank or whatever it is, because there's not too many players to sell him for, I don't think. Again, another player to mention is someone like Zaha, who'd be a bit of a differential. I think it's Cardiff away and Bournemouth at home for Crystal Palace, so that could be decent enough. But because there's so few players, I think, kind of standouts to sell him for, I would err on the side of keeping him. But if you're in a mini-league, for example, and you and your rival have both got him and you're leading, then I would definitely keep. I'd let them make the choice of who to go for. If you're chasing, then why not get rid with two really tough fixtures, especially that City game, and just go for someone else. If Rashford's fit, maybe go for him. Obviously, you're gonna have to wait till the press conference. If you're really far behind and no one in the mid-league's got him, maybe just keep him. But I do think it depends on your position. But I've got absolutely no problem with keeping Vardy. I just think the form he's been in, Leicester are looking good, even against Man City, there's potential. If you can get even a goal, I don't think you should really expect much more than that. That would be a really good return against Man City. So for me, probably keep. I can see an argument for selling, especially if you're chasing. And then kind of coming on to Man United players, obviously Huddersfield away and Cardiff at home. Cardiff at home is obviously going to be the last game of the season, the last game at Old Trafford this season. So that looks pretty good. Here's some stats for you, which I did read out on the Scoutcast. Now, Man United's last 4 games have been tricky enough. West Ham, Everton, Man City and Chelsea. So you could kind of forgive them for being a little less attacking maybe than against easier teams. But still, they're really poor. They've had 40 attempts on goals. So that's inside and outside the box in those 4 matches. That's 4 less than Cardiff, 14 less than Fulham, 17 less than Southampton and 35 less than Spurs. Now, Spurs is interesting because some people are thinking of getting rid of the likes of Eriksen and Son for Pogba. But right now, you'd almost think if Spurs are going to play against Bournemouth, it could easily be just as good as playing Huddersfield for Pogba. So not getting many goals, shots away. And then inside the box, which obviously where you'd expect players to have more chance of scoring, they've had 21 shots. Only Brighton are worse with 19. And Huddersfield have actually had more shots than them over the last 4 in the box than Man United have, which is really poor. But it's Huddersfield away and Cardiff at home. If they can't turn it around against them, when will they do it? When Solskjaer took over, one of the first games was Cardiff. They scored 4 or 5 goals in that. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen again. A lot will depend on Lukaku and Rashford injuries. If those two are fit, I think both of them are options. Because top 4 is still a possibility for Man United, I think if Rashford's available, he will play. Even if he's got a slight niggle, I think you just play him for the last 2 games and sort it out in the summer. Obviously, there's potentially games for England, but I think Man United are just going to want that top 4 wrapped up. Otherwise, Pogba is obviously the big one. In the top 10k, he's owned by 15.4%, which I don't think is that high. It will go up this week, but obviously he's on penalties as well. Man United are one of the top teams for penalties this year, so I definitely think he's worth a look. Pogba for sure. And then in defence, maybe someone like Luke Shaw. I could see 1 or 2 clean sheets over the last 2. So I do think Man United players are options. I think if Rashford and Lukaku miss out, it gets tough for them because, you could punt on someone like Sanchez or Mason Greenwood, someone like that. But that would be a massive punt. And for me, you'd have to really be in, I've got absolutely nothing to lose territory before bringing them in. I would love to get Sanchez in, but it's more hope that he'll do something than me really thinking he will. If Solskjaer hints that he's going to start, then I would be pretty tempted. But if you're trying to consolidate like a top 10k position or something like that, or you're happy with beating your personal record and you're going to finish top 50k or top 40k, whatever it might be for you, then I don't think Sanchez is probably the play there. But Pogba for sure. Sure in defence if you need someone in defence, and then up front Lukaku and Rashford definitely options if they're fit. So Man United, I just think if they're going to get rid of that form and play themselves in some good form, it has to be against Huddersfield and Cardiff. So definitely options. And then differentials for the final game week. So obviously people will look at them. I've already mentioned kind of Pogba's only 15% on the top 10k. Sanchez is 1.2% overall. Shaw is 0.5% on the top 10k. So I've looked at top 10k stats because that's kind of the position I'm in. But You can check their overall percentages. I doubt they're as low for some of these players, but they're still probably quite low. And for me, for overall rank, even if someone's owned by 20 or 30%, that's still a lot of managers that don't own them. And obviously, if you're looking at mini leagues, if you don't care about rank, but you're looking at mini leagues, if you bring in Sterling and your mini league rival doesn't have him, that is a massive differential. Obviously, in terms of the overall game and overall rank, he's maybe not such a differential. In terms of mini league, it only matters what your opponents have got. So check that out, obviously, before you make any decisions. But looking at overall rank, I think Sané, if you think he might start the last 2 games, 1.2% of the top 10k, he could be a huge differential. Bernardo Silva's posting pretty good stats recently, even better than Pogba. Obviously, the last 4 games have not been great. He's 7.6% owned. And I think Hazard is one of the biggest ones. Watford at home in the next game. Potentially could be his last game at Stamford Bridge. Obviously, that's all speculation. He may be there next year. But 8.2% of the top 10k. He could arguably be a captain this week. I think against Watford. Watford have been playing well. I just wonder if they're going to start having one eye on the FA Cup final. And I just think they've been a little bit hit and miss. I mean, they can be tight and keep it tight and, not necessarily a clean sheet, but keep the goals down. I just think Chelsea at home could be a game where they can see maybe 3 or 4 if Hazard's on it. The question is, will he be on it and will the rest of the team around him be on it? And that has kind of been their issue, really. Hazard's always good. Pretty much, it's the rest of the team that's the problem. But I think Hazard's a decent differential. In defence, I really like Van Aanholt, 0.5% in the top 10k. Cardiff away and then Bournemouth at home. I think there's attacking potential and clean sheet potential in both of those games, so I really like him. And Zaha, I already mentioned, 3.8%. So I would say if Rashford and Lukaku are out, even though he's kind of... there's reports that maybe Solskjaer's fallen out with him or he thinks his attitude is bad, I'd be surprised if Martial doesn't play. We'll have to wait and see what Solskjaer says, but he's 1.4% owned in the top 10k, so he could be a bit of a differential, even more so than Pogba, if you wanted to go for him. But I think there's loads of options. Even Redmond's got good fixtures, 12.2% in the top 10k. These are the kind of players I've been looking at. Obviously, Babel, a lot of people talking about him now, scored a cracking goal last week, 1.9% top 10k. So there is loads of options. I think it's just whether you're playing for rank or mini league. And I know a lot of people will say, well, one gives you the other, but ultimately, if you're not trying to go up in rank, but you're trying to beat a mini league rival, they've not got Aguero, and you can bring him in for free, then that's a huge differential to have going into the Leicester game. So have a look at your rivals and go from there. Spurs rotation, there's not really a lot I can say about this because obviously I don't know, but a lot of people are concerned about their Spurs players. I think they don't have the greatest record after the Champions League. They lost the game. Their squad is so thin at the moment. On one hand, it makes me think Eriksen and Son will probably play again. I think Eriksen's probably just got the stamina for it, and who are they really going to replace him with? And Son's had his rest against Ajax because he was suspended. And it was at home for Spurs, so they haven't had to travel, which is good. And I think Bournemouth is a good game for goals. Now, would I sell those players? I'm siding with maybe selling one of them for Pogba, but I'm not really interested in selling both. Or if I could get Sterling, I'd look at doing Eriksen to Sterling maybe. But even though Son's been so out of form, I just think Bournemouth's the kind of game which they can get goals in, even after the Champions League. So do I think they'll be rested? No. Does that mean they're absolute must-keeps? Probably also no, just because of the Champions League game. And their squad is just so thin. They will rest players where they can in defence and stuff. So it does kind of mess up the rhythm of the team maybe, having to... Trippier will probably be back out and on the bench. Eriksen will play again. Son will come back in, which means one of Llorente or Mora will probably miss out, maybe even Ali. So they are kind of changing the team a bit every game, which can't be good for kind of gelling the side together. But I just think Bournemouth, they've kind of been hit and miss. One day they keep a clean sheet and then they'll concede a bunch of goals. And I just think against Spurs that could definitely happen again. So I'm definitely siding with keeping one, maybe even both this week. And then mini league strategies, I've kind of already talked about looking at your rivals' teams and picking obviously players they don't have. That sounds obvious. For me, if you're ahead by quite a bit, then you can kind of block. So if your opponent's got Aguero, that's their one big advantage over you, and you're 40 or 50 points clear. And Aguero is not a bad pick. I'd be looking at bringing him in to block your mini league rival. When it comes to captaining stuff, it's a bit trickier because they're going to be thinking the same way. They want to go for someone different. So I would probably start playing your own game unless you're absolutely sure they're going to captain someone. You can captain the same. But I just think with 2 weeks to go, winning's everything in mini leagues, especially if it's like a work or mates league or something like that. that I would definitely play blocking tactics if I could. Now, if there's only a few points in it, I think you've got to play your own game a bit more, because, you know, even 30 or 40 points could be made up in 2 weeks. So if you're only like 5, 6 or 7 points ahead, that's really nothing. So I'd probably not worry about their team too much and just play your own game. Obviously, there's still quite a few points to play for in the last 2 game weeks. But yeah, you just got to play your own game, ignore overall ownership at that point, and just concentrate on your mid-league. Obviously, if you're going for rank, totally different. Look at the kind of ownerships in the top 2, or sorry, in your kind of rank position, if you're top 10k, top 20k, or whatever it might be, and just go from there. So yeah, good luck with any mid-leagues. I know it gets very tense around this time of year. And I've had mini-leagues where friends not necessarily won it, but they've gone into second place with a less got 15 pointer on the last day of the season. So interesting things can happen. And I suppose on that note, just to mention, I will be streaming live at 3 o'clock on the last day of the season. So we'll all kind of talk together about how it's going on the final day, see who's going to win the league, mini-leagues, and kind of the points on the final day and what ranks we will end up at. So that should be good. But kind of talking about this week some more. Captaincy is interesting. I think Man City are the standout this week. Arguably, I'm looking against Liverpool, and I shouldn't be because they've been so good attacking wise. But I think Newcastle away could be a tough game. A lot of people saying Rafa might kind of let them win or not be worried about them winning, but I don't think he's going to play like that. And I think Newcastle can keep it tight where they need to. So for me, Man City are the standout. They're not really rotating that much. Aguero or Sterling are the key men. If you've got both, I would usually side with the midfielder, so I'd probably go for Sterling. But I think Aguero is a fine choice as well. The differentials for me are maybe Spurs, but the Champions League game would put me off a little bit. I think Wolves playing Fulham is probably the key differential picks this week. So Jimenez or Jota you could go for if you really wanted to go different. But I think Az made a good point in the Scoutcast. If you go completely different captain, you're not only risking that, or you're not only hoping that the big boys like Aguero and Sterling blank, but they're also that you'll play a haul. So you're kind of betting twice on a differential captain. So for me, I would try and look at bringing in differential players, but probably playing a safer captain, because a captain can make a good week brilliant or a bad week okay. So if you can get a haul, so there'll be the players I'm looking at. I think I'm going to stick to Aguero. Wolves are definitely the out there choice. As for what I'm going to do, I'm tempted to stick with my team and go into the final game week with 2 free transfers. Eriksen and Son are slight concerns, but really the main man I want there is Sterling. I'd have to take a hit, and I would probably have to fund it with Lacazette, who's got Brighton. And I'm going to see what happens in Europe first, even though there's no guarantee that if he gets hardly any minutes, he plays the next game. But that's what I'm going to do. And I just think I'll probably keep Lacazette for Brighton, see how it goes, and then probably swap him out. If I do anything, I can do Eriksen to Sterling and Lacazette to Rashford. I may go for that for a -4 and just hope for the best that I don't get punished for it. But I can see that kind of move punishing me at this stage of the season now. And I think if I go into next week with 2 free transfers, I'll know exactly what my rank is, exactly what I need to do. If this week goes okay, I could even get back into the top 10k without taking a hit or making a transfer. And then from there, I can decide how different I want to go on the final day of the season and kind of play it there. I mean, at this stage of the season, I'm not going to finish at a bad rank or what I wouldn't be happy with. I don't want to say bad because I know people have different views on what a good rank is. But for me, at this point, I'm near the top 10k. So anything outside of that now, I'll consider a bad rank for this season. Next season might be completely different. So I'm slightly worried about that. So I'm probably going to stick. If I make a transfer, it'll either be Eriksen to Pogba or Eriksen and Lacazette to Sterling and Rashford. And if Rashford's fully fit and ready to go, and that's what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says, then I may well do it. So we'll see. Good luck in Gameweek 37. Like I said, there will be one more stream this week on Thursday, and there'll be one more preview next week. We are coming to the end of the season, of course, but still plenty of content. If you enjoyed this one, give it a like. Comment below, let me know if you've got any questions or any of your own point of view on what I've said. Otherwise, good luck for next week. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers all.